me just share this. This is from Elder Uchtdorf. He said this. He says, work can be ennobling and fulfilling, but remember Jacob's warning, not to spend your labor for that which cannot satisfy. If we devote ourselves to the pursuit of worldly wealth and the glitter of public recognition at the expense of our families and our spiritual growth, we will discover soon enough that we have made a fool's bargain. Remember, we are only temporary travelers in this world. Let us not devote our God-given talents and energies solely to setting earthly anchors, but rather let us spend our days growing spiritual wings. For as sons and daughters of the Most High, we were created to soar to new horizons. I like that. I like that. We were created to soar. Friday, I got a call from my brother, who's 60, almost 66. He goes, Bryan, he says, my company's going to buy me out. So he does insurance. So I got a lot of decisions I got to make. You mind if I come by? So Saturday, we spent the time just talking about this subject we're talking about now, retirement. Getting houses paid off, saving for retirement. In his case, he's at the retirement stage. And today I was reading an article. It was an older article from Jonathan Clemens. But the topic was this: be ready when changes come. What do you guys think? You think the government's financial situation is going to improve? No. Do you think we're going to start having a lot more kids? Do you think there's going to be a lot more people paying into the Social Security system than those taking money out? So what do you do in a case like this? And this is a 2004 article, but it's still very good. He says this. He says, something's got to give. Economic growth alone won't be enough to eliminate today's massive federal government budget deficit. That's especially true once you figure in the retirement of the baby boomers and the resulting explosion in Social Security and Medicare costs. Eventually, we have to see some combination of rising taxes and shrinking government spending. How can you protect yourself? Here's some thoughts. And I thought he gives 5 different thoughts. Number 1, collecting less. Says it seems almost certain that older Americans will have to wait longer to get a decent-sized check from Social Security, either because the eligibility age is raised or as follow-up from the introduction of private accounts. I also think there's a good chance that Social Security will become fully taxable and that Medicare benefits will be scaled back. So what do we have to do? He's saying plan for having less. 2, losing more. Even as we wait longer for Social Security, we're also likely to see tax rates shoved higher. Indeed, a decade from now, I think we'll look back wistfully at today's rates and marvel how low the rates were. My hunch is that tax rates will increase the cost of the board, with income, capital gains, and dividends all done at higher rates. Today's slew of tax deductions and credits will probably be curtailed, and the state taxes may make a comeback. So plan on receiving less. 3, dodging taxes. Individual retirement accounts remain a fine choice, but rather than investing in a regular IRA, consider funding a Roth. If we end up with higher tax rates, owning a Roth could prove to be a bonanza because you withdraw your withdrawals in retirement tax-free. Number 4, paying ahead. What if you're already maxing out your 401k and IRA and you have additional money to send? I wouldn't necessarily opt out for other tax-deferred saving fields such as cash value life insurance, savings bonds, tax-deferred fixed and variable annuities. Instead, consider keeping extra savings in your regular taxable accounts with a view to investing in low-cost stocks and thereby earning dividends, and I add mutual funds and long-term capital gains. In fact, if you reach retirement with a bunch of investments in your taxable account that aren't worth as much more than the cost basis for tax purposes, you will be in fine shape. However, you'll be able to, you will be able to sell those investments to generate income without worrying too much about Uncle Sam's. My brother, when he talked to me, he says, if they do the buyout, he's going to pay off his house. And here's just an interesting point. He says, while I was writing this, I came across an early version of a book, The Coming Generational Storm, and it basically talks about the home. It says, as the authors note, if tax rates are high, there are enormous benefits to owning a home free and clear. Why? In essence, if you own your home, you are paying rent to yourself. And because there's no money changing hands, there's nothing for Uncle Sam to tax. But as we think about retirement and stuff like that, we need to be thinking about these things. We need to be making sure that we have our strategies in place for accumulation, for what we're going to do at retirement, for what we're going to do, how we're going to take that money out. Because all of those issues are very important. In fact, just ask my brother who was at my house on Saturday, and we talked for a long time. Okay, so now let's get back. That's kind of an overall thought. Now let's get, go ahead. Oh, sorry.
The article you just read, was that online?
No, but I'll tell you what, I'll scan it and put it on. Oh, thanks. Okay. I'll scan and put this one on. Downside is I'll probably put it on Wednesday's date, because I don't want you guys reading today's articles before I talk about it in class. So, but you'll notice that there's a couple of readings, and it's usually on the next class period. So you will at least have access to these. This is from the same author, Jonathan Clements. I really like him. He's done some amazing stuff. So this is Off Your Rocker. For a happy retirement, don't swap work for the front porch. Here's the latest thinking on retirement. Don't. That doesn't mean you shouldn't retire from your job, but what will you retire to? Many people give scant thought to what they will do after they quit the workforce, and the result can be depression, mental deterioration, declining health, and possibly a shorter life. To avoid that fate, experts say you need to treat retirement less like a lengthy vacation and more like a career change. We spend 40 years plugging away at our jobs, struggling to amass enough money so we can enjoy a few fun-filled decades at the end of our lives. Yet having a heap of money doesn't guarantee a happy retirement. There are 3 key reasons. First, no matter how much you hate your job, it's likely providing you with far more than just a paycheck. There's a lot more things that our work provides. 2, if you're married, retirement means you will suddenly be spending more time with your spouse. The potential for conflict is huge. In fact, I'm not sure my wife can handle me around more than I am now. Third, many folks have the wrong notion of what retirement's all about. It's what I call vacation confusion. They think that retirement is a rest well-deserved. Once you're rested up, then what? And so what there is, he says, to find the answers, you really have to answer 4 key questions. Number 1, what are your passions? Well, while it's easy to identify retirement's pitfalls, it's much harder to avoid them. Want to improve your chances of happy retirement? Spend some time chewing over these 4 questions. What are your passions? Many people don't know because they hid them long ago. Many people give up on their passions early in life. So what you need to do is figure out your passions and then start working in those areas. Number 2, what is your purpose? Well, a little thought, you can probably put together a list of activities you enjoy, but that alone isn't enough. You feel fulfilled when you're doing something that's both important and satisfying. You know, I told you before, my brother's serving a mission in Nauvoo, he and his wife, and my parents serve missions and things like that. 3, how will you replace the stimulation at work? When you're in the workforce, you have to get yourself to the job every morning, deal with colleagues, and grapple with work-related problems. Taken together, that gives you regular physical, social, and intellectual activity. But how are you going to handle that once you retire? And then the last one, what's your new role at home? Before you quit the workforce, you should hash out a slew of issues with your spouse, including how much you will travel, who will handle which chores, and how much you'll be able to spend. But retirement isn't just that chance to go, for those who are golfers. I'm not a golfer. Tried a couple of times and still couldn't hit the balls. Do something that I can at least touch the ball a little more often. But you have to think about those things. So just important key issues. You know, a lot of times we go to retirement and we think it's like this. I don't know if that's real or not. And I don't know. I don't know what this says in German, but we think retirement's like that. And, you know, it's all going to work out well. We're just going to start at the top. We're going to put our feet together, and we're going to get going. And that little magical thing is going to appear at the end, and that's where we're going to land. But what if it doesn't? How should we be planning? And again, we don't know what the government's going to do. Like my wife and I and my daughter, we read today, we're in ether. And we're just finishing up there about what happens there when secret combinations come in. How do you handle those type of situations? Lots of different things, and so it's really important. So let's start with just a little case study. Okay. We graduated in April. 2 similar offers, both located in San Francisco. I like San Francisco. I worked there. He would content to stay with for 30 years. A has a 401k, 100% match up to 4%. B, 401k, no match, but a defined benefit plan. Average salary, a factory of 1.5% in years of service up to 30 years. Assuming the same salary is the same for either company. Which is the more retirement package? And can he participate in other packages? Anyone had this type of problem? Thoughts? Yeah.
My initial thought is if 2 companies in San Francisco are offering $50,000, he's returning both down.
Realize I put this together with $50,000 for a little bit of money. It'd probably be 60 or 70. Cost of living pretty high in San Francisco. But the point here is, do many of you, how many people have to ask this question? How many people have looked at the retirement package of the company and said, is this really what I want? And does that influence your decision whether to go with the company or not? And so the challenge is we really need to understand these plans. So let's talk about, I hate to admit it, but today to a degree is we're going to go through a lot of different investment vehicles. Remember, investment vehicles are the shopping carts. You still have to figure out what you put in those. And then from our discussions on investments, there'll be different asset classes and different funds to follow those different asset classes. But we're going to go through a lot of different investment vehicles today. So please bear with me. Okay, really there's 2 main types. Two main types of qualified retirement plans. What does it mean it's qualified? Qualified by who? Yeah, qualified by the IRS. So these are qualified plans that are qualified by the government that give you certain advantages. Number 1, there's employer-funded plans. Those are generally called defined benefit plans. Your benefit is defined, it's set actuarially. And then there's employer-sponsored retirement plans or defined contribution plans. That's what most of us are familiar with, 401ks, 403bs, things like that. So defined benefit plans, employer's contribution, actuarially determined. We joke about the guys with a little bit green glasses, green eye shades in the back trying to figure out how much what it is. Defined contribution is specified by a formula. How about benefit amount? With a defined benefit plan, it is certain. You're guaranteed a certain amount. However, with a defined contribution amount, it varies. It depends how much you put in, depends on how long you keep it in, and it depends on your risk, your asset allocation. Internal Revenue Code limits apply for defined benefit, maximum benefits funded. For defined contribution is your contributions. What's the maximum you can put into a 401k in 2017? 18,000. How about if you're part of the OGC, the Old Geezers Club like me, over 50?
20%.
I can put in an extra 6,000 in, yeah. Types of plans, defined benefit, cash balance, and then the different types of plans here. So it's really important that we understand these types of plans. What are the different business forms? For example, BYU is tax exempt. Can they use each of these things? So for tax exempt, you can't do a stock bonus, but you can basically use each of these plans. However, BYU has a 401k. Any idea why? Instead, because they could do a tax exempt, where they could do a 403b, things like that. But any idea why BYU does a 401k when it's a tax exempt institution? And I don't know the reason, but here's just my thought. Does the church have other types of businesses that are not tax exempt? Yeah. With a 401k, you can use both tax exempt and non-tax exempt. Do you think the church has individual programs for each of them? Do you think that it's probably more cost efficient just to have one program that everyone kind of contributes to? Probably the single program. That's just an idea. But notice with the different types of business forms, you can use different types of retirement vehicles. So notice that the limits, funded limits, change. Again, these are updated for 2017. So sorry about that. And notice how that changes over time. So the important thing is just to realize that these different plans are available out there. Realize there's been a shift in employer qualified plans. It used to be that most of these were defined benefit plans. If you go 30 years ago and 40 years, most of them were defined benefit plans. If you look at right now, what it is, most of them are defined contribution plans. So what they've done is they've taken the funding responsibility from the company and placed it on the individual. Again, even more important that we spend time on preparing for retirement right now. Okay, so again, this is the number of pension plans from 1975. Here's the total defined benefit, defined contribution. What do you notice from this graph? Yeah. So the number of defined benefit plans is declining substantially. So we need to be aware of it. It may not be available. Those type of plans are likely not going to be available. Okay, defined benefit plans. I think most of you have read it, but it's a promise. How about what happens once you retire? Is that company required by law? I mean, can things come up which can cause them to stop contributing? To a degree, the answer is yes. I was reading an article just in the actually it was in the Deseret News a couple years back about some companies that have stopped their defined. They've reduced the employee benefits, healthcare benefits to retirees just because they didn't have the resources. So it's a promise of a defined payment, which based on a benefit formula, two different types. We'll hit this quickly. For example, BYU has a defined benefit program. They've actually cut it back, so I'm thankful that I'm grandfathered in it. But generally, it's some average salary, and they can determine like the last 5 years or the last 3 years. A certain company-determined factor, say 1.5%, and then years of service up to some maximum number of years. So let's say if you had $60,000, which is your average salary, you were there 25 years, and their factor is 1.5%, you would get $22,000 a year, or 37.5% of your final factor. Yes?
Just to make sure I fully understand, like the military is after you've hit 20.
Like policy where they pay you a certain amount of salary the rest of your life. That's defined benefit.
Yes.
Okay.
So I have a good friend who was in the military. He retired after 20 years in the military. Then he went into another career. He retired after 13 years there with full benefits. Then he went into his third career for 7 more years. And I think he's living right now probably about 120% of his pre-retirement salary, which is not a bad way to go. So I have a brother who works in California. He's he works with the California teachers, and he's hoping to retire at roughly about 60 or 70% of his pre-retirement income. So you add back his Social Security on top of that, and he's going to be doing pretty well. So be aware that these things are out there. Advantages: you don't contribute, you don't bear any risk. Here's a question: if you have a defined benefit plan, would that be considered more your bond allocation or your equity allocation? Yeah, more your bond allocation. So if you have a defined benefit plan, you could probably be more overweight equities because of that framework. Okay. Cash balance plans. A number of companies had defined benefit plans, and what they've tried to do is they've tried to transition away from those, and so they started what's called a cash benefit plan. Yes, Alex?
I have a question about the last slide.
Okay.
So like with GM, when they did their defined benefit plan with their pension that they had, like they set up, then they had to declare bankruptcy and no one got their pension.
Okay.
Like, is that a big risk? Would it be better to like do a contribution to a 401k?
So what I think happened with that defined benefit, that those benefits went to the Benefit Guarantee Corporation. They still got something, but it was a significantly less because of there's a government agency, but that agency is pretty well they maxed out all of the funding. So just be aware. Just be aware this is a promise. When you go look for companies, there's a term. What does it mean, funded versus unfunded pension plans? What's an unfunded pension plan? Does that mean that they've got the money set aside for all current retirees? Actually, if it's unfunded, they don't. Your payments are actually made from company earnings. So do you want to go with one that has a funded or an unfunded plan? A funded plan, because that means that they have the resources already set aside. And you can actually go up and you can see companies have what percent of their pension liabilities are funded versus unfunded. And did I answer your question?
Well, I mean, yeah, you answered part of it, but I think the second part of my question is like, is it better to do something like this or to get like a 401k? That's kind of my...
Or can you do both?
I guess you could.
Both. So the thing about a defined benefit is generally you don't contribute. It's nothing. So if you've got it there, then I would use it. Most places won't have it just because the number is declining so quickly. But if they do have one, then I would just, so the question is, do they have it? The answer is yes, I'd take advantage of it. Then the second question, is it funded or not? If it's funded, I would definitely be happy about it. If it's not, then I probably wouldn't plan on it too much. And then if it's available when I retire, things are, I'm happy because of that. Okay, cash balance plans. Again, employer contribution 4 to 7% each year. It's a guaranteed rate of return. And the nice thing is you don't make any investment decisions, but it doesn't grow very fast. So that's kind of our framework here. Nice thing about these plans is generally they're more generous than some of your salary contribution plans. But now let's get to our defined contribution plans. Okay. Defined contribution plans, well, let's talk about how you can, this is just BYU, just for things. Once you retire, you have to make a decision. How are you going to take the money? So you can take 4 main distributions. You can take a life annuity, which is, for as long as you live. You can take a 10-year certain in life. So if you die before 10 years, you'll at least get it for a maximum of 10-year certain life, 15 years certain in life, the shorter of 15 years or whenever you die, 20 years certain in life, or you can take joint and survivor annuities. This relates to both you and your spouse. Again, different ways. When you pass away, does your spouse need the entire 100% or will they get 75%? Are the requirements less? You could also special joint and survivor annuity. or you can qualify joint and survivor annuity. So realize if you bring your spouse into it, are you and your spouse likely to live longer than just you yourself? The answer. So what does that do to the payments each month? And the payments are likely to be less. Okay. Defined contribution. This is kind of what we're familiar with. This is much more familiar. So employer contributes, then has no additional obligation when the employer retires. There's 3 types. There are discretionary contribution plans, profit sharing, stock bonus. There are fixed contributions where they're required to contribute a certain amount. And then this is what we're familiar with, employee contribution accounts. And so a couple of things. Profit sharing, I worked at a little company called Emerging Markets Investors Corporation in Washington, D.C. I was there 4 years. When I left, I didn't realize we had a profit sharing plan. But about 6 months later, I got a check in the mail that said, okay, this is your participation in the plan. And then we immediately moved it over into a 401k. Stock bonus plan, you're benefited with shares of stock. What's the risk of this type of a plan?
Stock goes down.
Yeah, stock goes down. And also, the company does poorly, your entire retirement is in company stock, you're much less diversified there. And then money purchase plans, you don't contribute, but the company contributes. Yes?
Going back to that last one, the stock bonus, is that kind of like the Enron employees that they held out their stock in Enron, and that's...
That was a big contributor to it. But I have another friend where I learned, you know how we talk about donating appreciated securities? This is a friend that worked for a company there, and they used to allow them to buy stock at a 15% discount to the average over the previous 6 months. And after a year, it became yours. And that's where he started doing that. He would buy company stock. A year later, because he could sell it, then he would donate it for his tithes and offerings. That's where I learned about that, that trick there. And then fixed contribution plans, thrift savings plans, target benefit plans. Target benefit plans are interesting because they'll sit down as soon as you're hired. They'll decide how much you're going to need at retirement. They'll make one calculation then, and that'll be your calculation for the rest of your career. And then this is the one we're familiar with it. 2010, employee contributions to salary reduction plans. How about 95% of 401k plans have matching contributions? Do you think that goes up or down depending on the time period? Yeah. How about 2008 and 2009, 2010? Probably dropped, and then after that, things came up again. But realize company benefits, those are, to attract good people, they need to make sure that they're offering what everyone else is offering too. So I would work on that too. So 3 different types, 401k or 401k Roth plans. We're familiar with that. Again, this is for private companies. 403b, tax sheltered annuities. It's like a 401k, but for nonprofit tax-exempt companies and institutions, for example, schools. And then 457, state municipal workers. Now, all 3 of these used to be managed very differently, and what they're trying to do now is they're trying to move them together. So now what we do is the 403b, 401k, and 457, they've kind of put those all together, and the nice thing is the limits are very the same. So differences between Roths, and we'll kind of go through these things here. Oh, we have questions? Sorry, Warren.
I was going to ask, so what's the difference? I guess I'm confused. What's the difference between a defined contribution plan and then like an IRA?
Okay, so a defined contribution is an employee qualified plan that's through your employer. So we have individual and small business retirement plans that we'll hit in about 10 minutes. So you're about 10 minutes ahead of my question here. Okay. So here's a question. If you have a Roth IRA, does the company match go into a Roth IRA? No. No, that's right. It doesn't. So it goes into a traditional traditional plan. Okay. So generally what happens with your salary reduction plans, your company will give you a list of You got these 15 funds that you can put your money in. And then you have to decide what percent of your contributions are going to go into each fund. The nice thing, you have your asset allocation now, and let's say large caps were 50% and small caps were 20% and international was 10% and small cap was 20%. I don't know, whatever those numbers are. You can actually go in and just say, okay, I want half of my allocation to go into large cap. I want 20% to go into small cap, and I want 20% to go into international and 10% to go into REITs. So the nice thing, as you're building your portfolio, consistent with your investment plan, you're building the whole thing together at once. So that's a nice thing about your 401k. Will they have the exact index fund that you want? Maybe not, but they might have something similar. And so you can kind of check those out. Talked about advantages and disadvantages. Again, probably the biggest disadvantage is the risk is shifted from the employer to the employee. And that's the thing here. Here's just a number of defined contribution plans to be aware of. Loan privileges. Should you really be taking loans against your retirement accounts? I would not recommend that. But here's kind of the difference. Who funds it? What's the contribution? And who's eligible? But I think it's important that we set aside this money for a specific purpose and we try not to touch it. This is just my experience too. When legally, for example, you have to have your 401ks, they have to be a separate account for you. But I try very hard to get accounts for my wife, my spouse, because basically the retirement accounts are in my name, and so we try every year to basically max fund her retirement accounts, her individual retirement accounts. So she has things in her name as well. Okay. As we talk about these plans, there's some certain things you need to ask. Questions like, what are the annual or administration expenses? Are there transfer fees? How often can you reallocate your assets? Are there costs involved with those? So make sure you understand your plan. Probably the most important is, what are those annual or administration expenses? So ideally, your company is being wise in the things that they do. Here's annual contributions. Some things, here's a question. Is your company match included in your $18,000 annual contribution? It's not. So that match goes over and above. So for example, BYU, if I'll put up 6%, they'll match it with 4%. What's my return on that? See, 4 divided by 6? 66%. Would the stock market have to go down pretty quickly to lose that 66%? I think it's really important that we get those company matches. Here's some other things. Vesting, you need to understand. Different types of vesting schedules. This means how soon is the money that the company matches, how soon is it yours? When I left my job in Washington, D.C., I basically left everything from the previous 2 years because I wasn't vested. But be aware of the vesting schedule. So some of them are 60% after 2 years, 80% after 3, and 100% after 4. Some other vesting schedules, there are different ones. Yeah?
So you said that the employer contribution goes into a separate account in yours?
Right, so it'll be a separate account. Right.
And the employer contribution will always be tax deferred. So you have to pay taxes when you get
right, because even, so for example, I have a Roth 401k here at BYU. My matching contributions go into a traditional 401k because it's probably just because of the tax implications. They probably had to do that just to make it easier for companies and things like that.
I was just curious, why do you think they set such a such a strict limit on how much we can contribute each year?
I think it's the government giveth and the government taketh away.
Yeah.
So, and here's another thing here. So, the limits are on how much. The limits are on how much you can put in, but they also have a thing called. Well, let's do tax consideration. We'll get to this in just a second, but they have required minimum distributions. So if you do a 401k, you get this tax benefit. you get this tax benefit, but you're required by law at age 69 and a half. What you do is you take the sum of all your tax deferred accounts, divide it by this life expectancy, and that's a required minimum distribution. And what happens if you don't take that out in that year? What's the tax on it? 50%. Here's a question. With a Roth, do you have the required minimum distributions? Actually, I'm not sure if the laws have changed. Some tax accountants have figured that out. But what you do is you take it out of the Roth and you put it into a rollover Roth IRA, and then there are no required minimum distributions with a Roth IRA. But they'll probably fix that pretty soon. And in fact, it may be already fixed. But you're required to do these required minimum distributions. Okay. Let's see if there's any other topics that I wanted to hit. Yeah, just some quick ones. So, and then you have what are called your distribution options. Oren.
So I was just going to ask, like, with setting up for retirement, I mean, that's 40 years, 45 years for most of us. Like, how aware should we be of, like, tax implications and stuff changing? Should we be willing to adjust our retirement if something were to happen, like, the next 20 years with tax law? Or
I think I'd be willing to adjust it.
Okay.
But what am I adjusting? Am I adjusting the amount I'm going to save?
No.
So what am I adjusting?
Probably how you save it.
Yeah, so I'm adjusting which vehicles I would use. So in a case like that, just how many people think taxes are going to go down in the next 40 years? Raise your hands. Raise them higher, please. So what does that tell you about going between a Roth and a traditional vehicle? So, and here's where I am right now. You know, we have 7 kids. I'm down to my youngest just turned 17. So how many benefits do I get from child tax credit? So I get 1 now. Next year I won't get that at all. How about, do I get a benefit from if my house is paid off, do I get that tax benefit there? No. So do you think my tax rates are, I think I'm paying more or less in taxes right now than I was, say, 5 years ago or 10 years ago? Probably more. So in retirement, with the potential of tax rates to rise in retirement, I think having some of your money in Roth is a good idea. So you can take your money out. So at retirement, you've got distribution options. How are you going to do that? Number one, you can take a lump sum distribution or as needed. So the downside is some plans, you can only get distributions every 3 months, so you have to be wild. And then once you take it out, you know what? You pay taxes on it immediately. So the other thing you could do, you could purchase an immediate annuity. Again, that could give you payments for as long as you live. Nice thing about that is that you can also do it for you and your spouse too. So once one of you passes away, the resources can continue. Nice thing about immediate annuity is the fees. Remember, anytime you do anything with an insurance company, these are by nature very high fee products, just because they're so complex. And so very high administrative costs because of the complexity of that. And then you could do periodic payments, or you could roll it over into those things. But those are really the 4 options that you have. So just be aware. Okay. So, yeah.
Quick question. If I'm at one company and I'm transferring companies, for example, and I have a 401k set up through this company, what are the effects when I move that to another company? Or is it difficult to do, or how does that work?
Is it difficult to do? So with a defined benefit plan, what happens if you leave the company? You lose it. How about a defined contribution plan? Yeah, it's because it's all yours. Now, what about the contributions from the company? Anything that's vested is yours. So if you leave before the vesting period, you would lose that. So you've got a couple of options. You could either roll it into your new company's 401k, or what I did, you can create a rollover IRA, and then you can instruct the company to roll that over into your rollover IRA. What's the risk of just taking the check? What does the company have to do? Before they give you a check, what do they do? Yeah, they'll actually take out 20% withholding. And then once you take that, you receive that check, you put it into another place, you have to put that other 20% in or you pay taxes on that. So it's better that you don't touch that money. With any retirement money, it's better that you don't touch it. You set up a rollover IRA. With that new rollover IRA, you instruct them to contact the 401k provider and they will transfer those funds over. Okay. So just to be on the safe side. So let's go back to our case. How would you respond? What's it a function of? Yeah.
Planning on staying at the company with a time benefit plan.
So how long are you planning on staying with the company? Go ahead.
I was just going to say it just depends on a lot of factors.
Yeah. So lots of different things. Let me just give you a couple of ideas. So number one, it's a difficult question to answer. Really depends on Bill, his forecast for the company, and his view of company policy. So how long is he planning to be with either company? Is he going back to graduate school? So realize if you're staying with a defined benefit plan, it requires you to stay for the life of the company. So really that's a big question for Bill. Number two, which is the viability? Which of these two companies are much more viable? Again, part of it is just trying to understand. Will they be around as long as Bill will be around? You want to make sure the products are good. And then view of company policies. Will they change it? Can they change it? And the answer is yes. Have they historically taken good care of their employees? Are plans consistent? What's the formula? What's the annual benefit? And what we try to do is we just try to figure out what's kind of the present value of that annual benefit. Do we have the tools to figure that out? And the answer is yes. So how about this? Can he have other plans? So at his $50,000 salary, can Bill have other plans? Could he have a Roth? Could he have an IRA? The answer is yes. Could he have a Roth IRA? The answer is yes. So lots of different options for him, and you can use different. You can have multiple plans at once depending on your income. Let me just do one more quick question here. Okay. Company has a choice. Your company has a 401k plan. You're discussing with friends and benefits the Roth 401k versus the traditional. So which would you select and why? And what are the assumptions on which that's based? Yeah.
I would say choose the Roth because ideally he's going to move up in the company, start making more, and
Get the higher tax brackets.
Get the higher tax bracket. So starting off, a Roth is a good idea. Okay. What assumptions go into the decision whether you choose a Roth or not? Goals, objectives, and assumptions. What's your projected tax rate in retirement? Again, from my discussion here, true, you'll be taking out less at retirement. Generally, what's the assumption? Retirement, you'll need about what % of your pre-retirement income? Probably, yeah, about 80%. I think that's kind of the framework. So projected tax rate in retirement. Do you need the tax break now? If you need the tax break now, you definitely want to go with the traditional. Do you have the cash to pay your taxes now? Realize if you put it in a Roth, you know what, you're going to have to pay those taxes outside of the retirement vehicle, so you're going to be paying more taxes now. And do you have a possible need for principal? If there's a chance you would need the principal, and I don't recommend this, but what's the advantage of a Roth? You can take principal out without penalty. You can't take earnings out, but you can take principal. And then have more money saved at retirement. This is how boring I am. On Saturdays while I'm working, I listen to the radio programs, and they have a lot of these safe money programs, which they're trying to get you to invest in indexed universal life. In fact, they're all insurance companies trying to, I should say, financial planners selling you insurance products that make them huge commissions. But there are places for some of those. But their comment, they call it the 401k trap. You know, you've got $1 million in your 401k. Do you really have $1 million there? And the answer is no, because you have to pay taxes on those. And so these insurance companies are getting you to sell out all your 401k and buy their insurance products. And so I'm a little bit skeptical. I have to admit, in the last 2 or 3 months, one was guaranteeing double-digit returns, and I called them on the phone and said, you guys are out of line, and thankfully they stopped doing that. Another one said, 8 to 9% returns, and I called them. He said, you tell me where you can get that kind of returns guarantee. Well, you got to understand this, and there was a bunch of things like that. But be careful what you hear on the radio. But if you want to have more money set aside at retirement, which do you actually have? You put in a 401k, realize that amount is that less retirement. So let's. So here's a quick question. You put in, let's say you put in $5,000 for retirement. We've got $2,000 for retirement. Let's say you get 0% return over the next 10% years. How much will you have? And let's say your tax rate is going to be 20% in retirement. How much will you have for retirement? You know, 80% of 5, you'll have $4,000. How about this one here with a Roth? How much will you have? And why will you have more at retirement? Yeah, because you pay taxes outside of the retirement vehicle. So in which of those situations are you actually saving more money for retirement? Yeah, you're actually saving more in the retirement vehicle because you are paying those taxes out at retirement. I have another friend who says, Bryan, he says, pay the taxes now. You never know what's going to happen in the future. And he's a financial planner that I respect. But realize you have to figure this out for yourself. My personal view is I'm concerned about rates rising in retirement. Also, if I have some in Roth and some in traditional, the tax system is progressive. And so I can actually manage my tax rates in retirement, which I think is important for us. Okay, how about go ahead.
So would you maybe
Putting
recommend
getting that free money from the matches, doing traditional, and then just enough to get that match, and then putting the rest into like a lot.
That's kind of my strategy. But realize you don't have to have 100% in. So I think I'm shooting for like 30%. 30%. And we'll actually show you how you can kind of estimate what that is. We'll actually discuss that when we answer some questions.
can you contribute to your Roth?
Have the company match into your traditional.
Right, that's what happens. Oh. So your company match is always in a traditional.
And then when you pay taxes on earnings in a Roth?
You don't. Right? You don't pay taxes on earnings or capital gains or income or things like that. Tanner.
So I guess I'm just trying to understand, so Roth IRA. So let's say I make $5,000 a month.
Okay.
And that's net of taxes from my employer.
Okay.
So I'm going to invest in a Roth IRA. I'll take from that $5,000 that I already pay taxes on. That's what I'm investing in.
That's right.
And then basically what you mean by a traditional IRA would be, let's say it was $6,000 gross. They would take some.
Right. So let's just say you had $50,000. Let's say you're putting $5,000 in.
Right.
If you have the Roth, you made $50,000. You put $5,000 in a Roth vehicle. You pay tax on $50,000. With a tax deferred account, you made $50,000. You put $5,000 in a traditional. You pay tax on $45,000.
So you're saying like for years, and you can do 6%, and then they'll match you 4%.
Right.
So are you limited to that 6% even if it's lower than 18,000?
Right. So no, you can put 6. I can put. I try to max it out. So here's another strategy I have right now. I have money in. Needless to say, I'm not living on my BYU income. I'm living on my income, but not my BYU income. But BYU has this really cool thing called the Roth 401k. So in essence, what I'm doing is I'm maxing out my Roth 401k, and then I'm taking money from my taxable accounts, basically to meet my budget needs. So in essence, what am I doing? I'm transferring taxable money into tax-free money. Is that a possible strategy? And the answer is yes. So that's just one of my accumulation strategies that I have. Okay, how about individual retirement plans? Are those available? And should we know these? Sorry. Oh. So individual retirement, what can we, how much can we contribute? Withdrawals, when can you make withdrawals? Notice up to $10,000 for your first time home purchase. Here's a question, do you still have to pay taxes on that? If you take $10,000 out of your IRA for a first time home purchase. You have to pay taxes if it's in a traditional, you do. But do you have to pay the penalty on it? And the answer is no. Deductibility, I think we've talked about, one thing we need to make sure is we need to understand what's called active participants and non-active participants. Let's say you were married, your spouse has a job, and the husband has a job and the other person doesn't have a job. Is the non-working spouse, are they an active participant? And the answer is no. So you can receive the full deduction regardless of your income. If neither spouse is an active participant, then all contributions are deductible. So we need to understand just who are the participants there. Deductibility limits. If you make too much money, you cannot. So if you make over $72,000 a year, an individual, you cannot deduct. You cannot do a traditional IRA. If you make over $120,000, married filing jointly, you can't do that. If you make, let's say you make $109,000, how much can you deduct? Can you deduct that whole amount? So if you're in this range here, and you're right in the middle, you can only deduct half of that. So again, if you make too much income, you're not allowed to deduct. Roth, notice the limits are significantly higher, $196,000. If you make more than $196,000, you cannot contribute. If you make less than $186,000, you can. So realize those things there, and notice that it changes with an education IRA, which is in essence a Roth IRA for education purposes. So realize those limits are there too. Notice these don't change. But you have to calculate your modified adjusted gross income. Okay, how about converting to a Roth? Is that a good idea? Oren?
That's a question would be, so with this, you can't contribute to your retirement plan, or you can, it's just not, like, there's no
Okay,
tax
so to realize,
benefit.
now we've stepped aside, now we're on individual retirement plans.
Yeah, right.
So if you've got a company retirement, qualified retirement plans,
Yeah.
as long as you make less than those limits, you could also contribute
Okay.
to an individual retirement plan.
So if you made more, you could only do your company.
Right. If you make more, you only do your company one. Are there income limits for your company plans? Yeah, no, they're not. Okay. And so here's the question. There's also small business plans. Could you might also have a company retirement plan and a small business plan at the same time? Yeah, if you had income coming in the right ways. Okay. You know, I'm running a little bit on time. I'm going to pass. But might it be a good idea to convert some money from traditional plans to Roths? What happens when you do that? Yeah, you have to pay the taxes. But give me a time when you guys might be out, I don't know, doing something like service, and you're not making much income, and you're paying a lot of expenses. Could that might be a good time? So, for example, just to say when you're going on missions. How much income are you going to have coming in during those time periods? Probably very little, except for your retirement income. And how about expenses going out? Are you going to have quite a bit of expenses? Yeah, what happens while you're on missions? If you take, say, $50,000 to $100,000 a year, bring that in to your accounts, basically you change that, because what do you have to do? Basically, that all that becomes income, and then you pay the taxes on it. But if you've got significant amount of expenses from your mission and other things like this, would your tax rate be significantly lower? Possibly. So just ideas, because that's what we want to do, is we want to think about ideas that can help us. We talked about required annual distributions, required minimum distributions. Be aware of those. Do you have required minimum distributions with the Roth accounts? Again, generally not. Okay, let's talk about some small business plans. Yeah.
But why, besides the company matching it, why would I ever invest in a traditional IRA?
Because it allows you to invest for retirement tax deferred.
So it's just if I don't want to pay the tax.
Yeah.
Because in my mind, the Roth IRA seems like a much better.
You know, and realize there's different opinions. I'm pretty strong on the Roth side. I know other people say, don't pay the taxes now because you never know what's going to happen in the future. But my sense is, well, how about let's hedge just a little bit. And like I said, if I have probably 30% in Roth vehicles and then 70% in the others, again, because it's progressive, what do I want to do? I want to manage the tax rate so I can minimize the amount I have to pay. And then
so just clarification, for a Roth IRA and a traditional IRA, that 5,500 cap, is that for all of the IRAs in your name, or is that for...
It's all the IRAs in your name for that year.
For that year. So if I have two, a Roth IRA and a traditional IRA,
right.
I can only do $2,250 each one.
Right.
Okay.
So if you're rolling over a traditional IRA to a Roth IRA, like we were talking about, do those contribution limits apply? Like, can you only roll over 5,500 a year? Or
no, you can actually, as long as you pay the taxes on it, you can roll over an indefinite amount. But realize, the year that you roll that over, that becomes income in that year. So that's why I say it's a neat idea. If you're on a mission, let's say it's costing you $4,000 a month, you know. So you bring in $100,000, you're spending $48,000, and then plus you've got your other deductions and exemptions, things like that. So you'd be able to do it at a fairly low tax rate. But that's the advantage of the time when you're serving your missions. So small business plans, again, funded by small business employer, funded by both the small business employer and employee. We need to understand these just because I think they're useful. I had before coming here, I was a partner with an asset management firm, and then I sold my equity back to the firm. And it came over 2 years. And the first year I didn't understand these things, and finally the second year what I did is I created a SEP IRA, and I was able to defer a significant amount of that income in. Contribute 25% of your salary up to $54,000 in 2017. My brother, his insurance business, he's looking at selling his basically his customer list or his customers, And we were talking about how you could defer some of that income by putting part of that into a SEP IRA. Again, can you do a SEP IRA when you only have one employee of the firm? Yeah, that's kind of sometimes some of the best ways to do. Contributions tax deductible, earnings grow tax deferred, and employees own the plans. And you could have multiple retirement accounts. And so the year I did my SEP IRA, I had both 401k and I had my SEP IRA. So be aware, SEP IRA is a good one. It actually allows you to defer a significant amount. Realize that the amounts change over time. Way back when I did it, I remember that the 415 funding limits were 25,000. So you can tell that was many years ago. KEO plans, small business retirement. You can set apart 20% up to 54,000 in this type of plan. Again, the same percentage to each employee. And then just some limits too. Realize that what the government's trying to do is trying to allow everyone to prepare for retirement. They're trying to give us all vehicles that we can use. And we need to be wise. And then you have what are called simple plans. Notice instead of up to 18,000, it's only 12,500 and only a $3,000 catch-up. And I'm not sure why the differences are there, but I think they're trying to kind of move everything back into a more consistent format. But the importance here, simple IRA, and you got simple 401k. And so again, what we're trying to do is trying to help people, to encourage people to save for retirement. Again, as we talked about at the beginning of the class, taxes are not likely to go down. Social Security distributions to people aren't likely to go up. Government spending, because it's continued to go, means that there's going to be less to go around. And because of each of these things, we really have to take responsibility for our own retirement. And as such, we need to understand the different vehicles that we have. So questions? Yes, Austin.
So, say if we're planning on going to professional school, like medical school, dental school, and we're probably not going to start really doing investments for retirement until we're 35 or 40, but then we're making quite a bit of money. A lot of these vehicles have limits. So what is your...
What do you mean? Oh, the maximum?
Yeah, the contribution limit. So what is your recommendation if we can't start investing until later, but
we'll have more than that.
So have a lot of money that we could potentially...
So we talked about that priority money. The ideal is to fill the first priority money, which is tax-free money. Then what's the second one? Tax-advantaged money. And so you'd start with the ones that you would... And what's the third? Tax-efficient and wise investing. So with most people, they're going to start off, they're not going to be making that much money. And so what they'll do is they'll probably be a few years before they'll be able to fill basically their maximum amounts with their qualified retirement plans. In your case, hopefully you're gonna defer 5 or 10 years, but you'll be able to fill those very quickly. And then what you'll do is you'll go into tax efficient and wise investing. So let's just answer that question. So where will he invest if Austin can max out his 401ks with his business plus 401ks? What would he want to put in his taxable accounts? What kind of mutual funds would he put there? Because these things he has to pay taxes on them every year. So what kind of mutual funds would he want to put in his taxable accounts? Would he want to put bonds there? Or are bonds taxed at a higher rate? Yeah. So what would he want? Go ahead. So you could do municipal bonds would be a good one there. And why is that? Federal tax free for interest. No. How about for capital gains? No. How about for his equities? Would he want mutual funds? Probably. And he would want low cost. Low turnover funds. Would index funds be an ideal one there? Yeah, because do they buy and sell a whole bunch? No, their turnovers are really low. So how much taxes on distributions are they going to have? Very low. So Austin, so that would be a recommendation. When you do your taxable accounts, just be very careful. What I do, if you want to be aggressive, things like that, do that in your retirement accounts. And then in your taxable accounts, again, low cost, tax efficient vehicles or assets would be the best. See if there's another problem that would be good. Oh, I do. Yes.
Would it also be beneficial, so if you're working for either a hospital or a corporation, then you also somehow create your own small business on the side that you can have additional retirement vehicles? So that's just another.
Yeah.
So I'm still having a hard time, like, I guess, wrapping my head around like the taxable versus retirement. So so retirement investments we don't, like if it's a Roth, we just never pay taxes on. It's already been taxed.
Right. So
but your taxable investments, like, what are the purpose? Or isn't it all for retirement? Or all for the future, I guess. That's where I'm confused.
okay. Repeat the question again.
So like, so you have like you split it between taxable and retirement.
Right.
But isn't everything that you're investing in for retirement, like in the grand scheme of things, for retirement for the future?
It would be, but you're limited by government law as the maximum you can put in.
So you've maxed out like the 18.
Right. You've maxed, and in my case, you've maxed out the 24.
And then the rest would go
Plus,
to tax.
you've also maxed out the $5,500 for you and your spouse, so that's another 11 plus 12, 13. So you try to max out your retirement vehicles first because they have the right. The rest you would invest in the taxable accounts. Okay, let's do one more quick case study. Okay, he's got money in a traditional and rollover IRA. On his 60th birthday, he didn't use any of his traditional IRA balances. On December 31st of his 69th year, he had $150,000 in his traditional IRA. How much is he required to take out next year? And here's the question. Could he take this out and put it back into a rollover IRA? So required minimum distributions. This is something traditional 401ks and any traditional IRAs. So I've got some money in a SEP IRA. So at age 69 and a half, I'm going to have to start taking these required minimum distributions. So how do we figure out what his required minimum distribution is? Take the total amount, divide it by his life expectancy number there. So what do you get? What's his required minimum distribution? So roughly 9,000, 94, you said? 95. Yeah, so but roughly 9,500. What happens if he doesn't take out that 9,500? What's his taxes on that? 50%. So is it important to understand those required minimum distributions? And the answer is yes. I had one other. So here's our last one. So Bill's married. He and his wife have both employer-sponsored plans. His modified adjusted gross income is $150,000. I should say their modified gross income is $15,000. Can he fully contribute to a traditional IRA and get the tax deduction? So what's the maximum? So he won't be able to contribute. His income's beyond the limits. If he makes 115, would he be able to contribute to a Roth? And the answer is yes, because the Roth is up to what's 199. And Neither of them are covered by an employer-sponsored retirement account. They can both contribute to a traditional IRA regardless of the limits. So it depends on whether you have retirement plans at work. So lots of little details, but things that are still important. Okay, takeaways. Thomas, I haven't picked on you in a while. What are your takeaways from today?
Well, it looks like with finance there is like a lot of learning that still needs to be done to like pick up on all the finite details. And so it's kind of like, you know, we're supposed to be stewards now, and through our stewardship, we're supposed to be learning as we go until we're kind of a place where you're at where you like understand a lot. And you can teach us this. That was my takeaway from today.
Okay. A lot of things we need to learn, lots of little details. And the key is just kind of understand the details. And then you'll be teaching your kids, and you'll be teaching probably my grandkids. Other takeaways?
Yeah, the investing environment is always changing, like regarding tax laws and regulation, and it's important to remember not to change your goals, but just the way you get to them.
So tax laws, the environment is changing. It's important not to change your goals, but try to realize that you understand that you may have to change some of the vehicles and things to accomplish your goals.
I had kind of similar thought to that. We talked about like lots of different ways that you can help on retirement, different strategies. So I kind of saw that there's no like one perfect way to plan for it. You just have to do what's best for you and your goals and your circumstances.
And realize the views on Roth IRAs are different. Again, I have another good friend. Again, I respect him. His view is just pay all the taxes now. But realize you guys have to come to understand. But you need to understand the different things. And again, no one right way, but there's a better way for you. So my brother, he came in and he was really concerned. I says, well, the most important thing is, you know, you and your wife, go spend some time at the temple. Think it out, talk to a lot of people, and then get Heavenly Father's help. Other takeaways? Yeah.
Like what you said in the beginning, treat retirement less like a vacation, more like
Treat retirement less like a vacation and more like a career change. Here's my takeaways. There's a ton of stuff to learn. Make sure you understand the basics and keep updating your knowledge, because knowledge is what will help you here. Number 2, follow the priority of money. Get the match. If it's free money, don't leave it on the table. Number 3, even though it's a retirement from your work, there's no retirement from the gospel of Jesus Christ. Realize as disciples of Christ, we joyfully endure to the end. Thanks, everyone. We will see you on Wednesday.